Welcome to another episode of the Spurs Takeover. I'm your host, Joe Garcia, and we're going to be joined by our guest and co host. Our co host here is Wesley Perkins, and our other co host and guest is Steven Anderson of Project Spurs. We're going to be talking about the Spurs' victory over the Boston Celtics by a final score of 129 to 114. This is the Spurs' second victory in a row against another opponent who has a decent record in the Boston Celtics at 25-10. So I believe this is the first road win of the season that the Spurs have against a team who is above 500. So kudos to the San Antonio Spurs for stringing together two wins against some of the better teams in the East, being one of them the Bucks and now the Boston Celtics. And in these two games, the team looked great, not only offensively but defensively as well. So let's go ahead and dive in right now, and we'll go ahead and start with you, Steven, since we had Wesley on the show last time. What were your observations in tonight's victory?
The Spurs look very good these past couple of games, guys, and that's one thing you notice with this team is like we talked about this before when the season started, which was they were up and down, but these past couple of games, even though they lost to Milwaukee in Milwaukee, they came back obviously the next night or the next 48 hours later and beat Milwaukee, and then obviously to beat Boston tonight. But those three games, despite that loss to Milwaukee, the Spurs have looked different. They've looked a lot more in control. They look like they know who they are now. DeMar DeRozan's playing out of his mind, which is always good news. Well, the biggest difference is, I think Wes will agree with this, LaMarcus Aldridge is hitting three-pointers. That's the biggest difference for this Spurs team right now.
The floor.
Yeah, exactly. And when he does that, it forces big men who aren't used to playing on the perimeter, forces him out there to guard him, freeing up the paint for a guy like DeJounte Murray or Lonnie Walker or someone like that. And that's where this Spurs team was missing since October. And we're now in January. And look it only makes you wonder what would have happened if they would have done this from the start. Where would this season be right now? Obviously, they are in the playoff hunt right now. They're number 8 seed right now. They have a chance to move up as the season goes on. But right now, I like the direction they're going in. As someone who covers multiple teams trying to get into the playoffs every year, it's better to have the bad start now than have it down the line when you're trying to get into the playoffs. And right now, I think they're at the point where they're starting to peak a little bit and go on the right side of actually playing against these other teams. And also, one other thing, if you notice, the DeMar trade LA talk has died down these past couple of weeks.
It's all but subsided now.
Go ahead, what?
It's all but subsided now. The Spurs fans are clamoring for that.
Definitely. And the reason for that is, I think, because not only does the team look better, but they're winning, and it just takes time for things to gel. And I think Marco Bellinelli getting 0 minutes is a massive part of that.
Well, watch your mouth about Marco Bellinelli, man. He's the MVP right now because as long as he sits on that bench and he does not play a single minute, especially in the fourth quarter, he's my pick for the Spurs MVP every time they win a game on the road because he's not playing.
He's the MVP, the most valuable bench player.
That he is.
Sits on the bench.
Very nice. That is true. And as long as he does that, Marco stays on the bench. Lonnie is getting minutes here and there. I liked him starting in Milwaukee. Obviously, DeJounte Murray was out that game, but I liked him starting. And I think just little things here and there. Pop has said it before. He does not like the three ball. He doesn't like the fact that this is the way the game is now. He's publicly said it. There's no denying that. But he's adapting to it now, which is good. I mean, the Spurs hit a season-high 19 threes in their win over Milwaukee. They did well from three tonight. I mean, it's just I like the way the Spurs are going right now, and we'll see how it goes against Memphis, but so far, so good.
So far, so good. Let's go ahead and, before we pitch to Wesley, let's go ahead and give you some of the stats on the night here. Let's go ahead and start with some of the starters for the San Antonio Spurs. The starters, beyond DeMar DeRozan, who had 30 points tonight, they were kind of lackluster. You had Trey Lyles, who had 9 points. LaMarcus Aldridge had a quiet 13. DeJounte Murray had 10. And Bryn Forbes had 15 points. Anytime Bryn scores in double digits, always a plus, because he's a liability defensively. So if he's not scoring, he's really worthless out there in the starting lineup for a better lack of terms. I'm being nice to him. The bench played quite well. You had Lonnie Walker, who saw great minutes tonight, and he had 19 points. Derek White also played quite well tonight, 15 points. You also had Patty Mills. He's been solid since the start of the season. He had 9 points off the bench. So, I mean, they played well. It was a well-rounded game. You had, I think it was 6 players in double figures tonight, which is always a plus. It's not up to just one particular player or 2 players to share the scoring load. Now this is team basketball, and we're seeing a different dynamic to the San Antonio Spurs, where before they were playing hero ball. Now that they're starting to play together as a cohesive unit, we're starting to see them play better defensively. The ball's moving a lot better offensively. They're setting screens. They're setting picks. People are finding the open man. They're having some backdoor cuts, moving without the ball, getting some easy buckets. We saw a lot of that tonight, and I want to see more of that. And I also want to see more of Lonnie Walker in the open court. He's quite exciting to watch and very explosive. Everything he does in the open court's always something to keep your eye out on, because you get excited. You're like, I wonder what this young man's going to do. Is he going to go in for some type of sky hook, or he's going to go for a dunk? It's going to be on the highlight reel. So I always got my eyes out when Lonnie Walker's in the open court. But that's enough of my astute assumptions of the game, our observations. So let's go ahead and pitch to Wesley. Wesley, what did you see in tonight's game?
Yeah, some really poised and calm play. It's spared. I know they lost that first game to Milwaukee, but we talked about that a little bit the other night. They really actually played pretty well in that game. I mean, minus the bugaboo that they have in the third quarter, which, by the way, fellas, they still had that same bugaboo tonight in the third quarter. And again, I think part of that is, I tweeted out frustrated at the time when Boston made that run, because it's that lineup that sees Bryn Forbes and Patty Mills. And when that lineup is on the floor, if they're not making shots, I mean, you said it, Joe, Steve, and I've heard you say the same thing. When those guys are not making shots and not keeping them at bay, at the very least, it doesn't work. I mean, and you saw, Joe, I saw your, you tweeted out a video last week, or the last game, I should say, of Bryn just getting torched and then turning around and shaking his head. And, that's the same thing that happened tonight.
Let me talk about that video, because a lot of fans were like, well, what do you want him to do? Do you want him to go out there and guard somebody who's shooting a 25-foot three-pointer? It's like, no. The problem was Bryn couldn't break through the screen, so he wasn't able to break through. He had to go around the screen, and then he was completely lost out there. He didn't have a man to guard. He was kind of caught in no man's land, and then because he wasn't able to break through the screen, he had to go around it. The person that he was defending broke free, was able to go ahead and give an assist to a man out there beyond the arc, wide open for a wide open three. That falls on Bryn Forbes because he wasn't able to keep up with the man that he's supposed to be guarding. That was a misassignment, and he all but gave up on the play once he could not break through the screen. So that's what that play was about.
Yeah, and it goes back to the same thought of he's just not a guy who's aware all of the time. It's one of those things that really bothers me about his defensive prowess. There are a couple of times that he was in the lane, turned sideways or moving backwards, coming through a screen, and just in no position. I mean, absolutely no position. And you don't have to. Let me
stop you real quick, Wesley. Sergio, you are allowed to call into the show. I'm waiting right now. You can call in. The call-in number is 210-802-6152, and we'd be happy to go ahead and take your call. So if anybody wants to call in, please feel free to do so. You may continue, Wesley. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's all good. So it goes back to the same thing, just position there. It was good, though, and I thought coming out of that, when you saw that little run happen, and I know some people will say, well, they got lucky because, obviously, Kemba Walker got thrown out and they got 3 techs in a row. But listen, I don't think it had anything to do with that. That stemmed the tide a little bit. But DeMar DeRozan was, and especially these last 3 games, has just been a calming force. We've seen him have games where he forces things in the lane and he just takes poor shots or he tries to do too much. And it's between that and his game calming down and him letting the game come to him a little bit more. And whoever told LaMarcus, to Steven's point, to start shooting 3-pointers, kudos. because what it's done is it's opened up the lane.
We're getting a call right now. Okay, hopefully it answered the call. Hello? I guess not.
But no, Joe, what I was saying is simply that, when LaMarcus is shooting those 3-pointers, you got open lanes now for people to drive. You have spots for people to get to, and it allows for people to get passes across. You saw the floor spacing a lot better. And
Hello.
Do we have him?
No, I think we had him for a second. Then we lost him. I gotta find out how to work this thing. I've been over here trying to work on this thing for so long. I'm like, what in the world happened now? Sorry, guys. I'm trying to answer your calls.
Yeah, keep trying to call in. Now, just to kind of finish the thought, I'm
going to put him on speaker.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, sir. How are you doing? This is Joe Garcia of the Two Shots Podcast. Who am I speaking with? Hey, what's up, man? You're on the show right now. I got you on. I don't know if you guys can hear him or not. Can you all hear him?
A little bit.
Somewhat.
All right. So what's up, man? What are you talking? What were your observations in tonight's game?
Well, my observations were that Marco didn't play, which is awesome. Also, Brand is getting less and less minutes, and finally, Coach is proving us wrong. I thought he was senile. I thought he was drunk, but he's playing Lonnie Walker more. And it alludes back to what you all said earlier. I don't know what took so long for them to do this. I think they could have a much better record if he would have played guys earlier. I don't agree with the way they did it, keeping Lonnie on the bench. I just don't agree with that. I think they should have 20, 22 wins, but I'm glad he finally did it. They beat two of the top teams in the East, so hopefully they can keep it going. I don't know about the threes from LaMarcus, but I do know as long as Brand and Marco are off the court as much as possible, that's good for the team because those guys suck. And they couldn't guard me. I've never played NBA basketball. They couldn't guard me. So hopefully Pop does what he needs to do, and hopefully they keep it going. I'm excited to see what they can do, but I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay, man. Well, I appreciate that call, man. We'll go ahead and give you our rebuttal on the show right now so we can have Wesley and Steven go ahead and comment on what you just said. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to call into the show. Great call.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. So you kind of heard what he was saying. I like what he has to say. It's always good to hear from the fans. So he was just giving his comments, his observations in tonight's game. Of course, everybody's always quick to criticize Coach Pop, and what he was doing in the beginning of the year. Now that he's kind of gotten these rotations down a little bit more, including, Lonnie Walker to play more minutes over Baloney, which is Marco Beninelli, we've seen that's improved the team defensively, and that's translated into them actually stringing together 2 wins in a row now. So we want to see that continue. Of course, everybody's a critic, so we can't satisfy everybody. But, at least the team is playing much better. They're much improved over the course of the last couple games. So before we go back to you, Wesley, Jason Garcia says, L.A. is still garbage. He says Walker is making too many stupid fouls. Jason's always the Russian judge, man. He always has something to complain about. I know Jason Garcia. That's why I say that. He says Spurs need to hire Garrett.
Oh, God.
This game, Sergio Lozano says, the guy that just called in, our viewer, he says, this game shows you just the potential this team has. I got to agree with that. And Jason says, Joe, who did you call barbecue last season? That was Bryn Forbes, and I still call him barbecue because he gets cooked in the paint. He gets cooked defensively. That's why his nickname is barbecue. And then Joanne Hernandez says, huge win for the team. They need to keep it up on the road. I agree. Let's see. Pedro says I still owe him a song because I was testing the audio the other day and I was playing some music. So he's like he wants me to serenade him. I'm not drunk enough for that yet. We need to do some day drinking for that to happen. And besides, if I'm gonna sing, maybe I should sing and raise money for a charity or something. So maybe that's something we can think about for another show. Pedro Martinez says 60 wins. I think Pedro's already been drinking. And Sergio Lozano says, I don't doubt that the Spurs are turning the tide, but can't we lose against the Grizzlies? We could lose against the Grizzlies. It's not out of the realm of possibilities. The way this team has been playing, they play great against some of the better teams, and then they go ahead and lose against some of the lesser teams. It's the tale of two teams, who's going to show up on any given night. But it looks like the Spurs are making strides going in the right direction. So, Wesley, go ahead and give us your take again. Go ahead and continue, sir.
Yeah, no, I think where I was saying just is that whoever told LaMarcus to start shooting 3-pointers needs to get a raise because you have the floor space now. Where we've always said that the tandem of DeRozan and LaMarcus doesn't work and people would get frustrated is both those guys would be in the paint and clog up their area so that neither one had lanes to drive. And so they'd end up forcing shots. And so now what you have in that pick and pop where LaMarcus goes out on that 3-point line from time to time is he has the chance to take that shot, or he can put the ball on the floor, or he'll turn his back to the basket and he'll dribble him back to the basket into his little 18-footer, 17-foot, fadeaway, which is great. And it gives the players around him a chance, like Lonnie, like, Patty Mills, like, obviously DeJounte and Derek White to get to the basket. That's their game. And I feel like that's a significant improvement over the past couple of weeks. Defensively, we've seen a massive, shift in terms of the hustle. They're still not perfect. We saw way too many. Let's be honest. In the first quarter, the Spurs should have been down, because the Celtics had at least like 5 3-pointers in a row where they were wide open and just missed it. I mean, that's just being honest.
Yeah,
but
those were missed assignments, and probably Bryn Forbes had a lot to play in regards to that as well.
Yes, and that's the next point is that to Sergio's call a minute ago, Bryn, it's right. I mean, I think that Bryn needs to be that Steve Kerr kind of player, right? Steve Kerr in 2005 hardly got any play for the Spurs except for some key moments where they needed a shot or two, and he would come in off the bench and do his.
They needed that instant offense.
Yeah, you substituted that when you needed a key bucket, and for me right now. What you see is Lonnie Walker he's learned to become a Jedi Knight. He's learning what his powers are. He's figuring it out. And because of that, he's going from the Padawan learner to being that Jedi Knight. You got to love my Star Wars, man. And it's really fun to watch. I'm enjoying watching his growth a bunch and just seeing that the team is starting to feed around him. By the way, the 3 players that had the best plus minus, of course, Aldridge and DeRozan and Lonnie Walker. Just saying.
That they did. Joanne just gave us a comment, and so did Pedro. Pedro says, just kidding with the 60 wins, but hell of a win. A win is a win. He says, I agree. Rotations are improving. That you are correct, Pedro. The rotations are improving. Joanne says, I think Lonnie should be starting over Forbes. I don't think he should start. I think they should start Derek White. Lonnie is a lot of energy, and he's great in that second unit right now. He brings a lot of athleticism and speed to that second unit, whereas when you put Marco Beninelli into the game, that second unit becomes stagnant and it loses something on the defensive end, which is why when he's out there on the court, the lead all but evaporates. If they have a 10-point lead, you put Marco Beninelli and Bryn Forbes together out there on the court, that 10-point lead will probably dissipate in less than, a minute or two? It's gone. And it's because they're defensive liabilities. So yeah, we don't want to see them out there on the court together. If they are, it needs to be sparingly. They can't be out there for extended stretches. Maybe somebody gets into foul trouble or something. I can see that scenario play out where you're forced to play Marco Beninelli, but delegate him to the bench. I'd rather see Damari Carroll in there. He is a journeyman, and he is known for playing decent defense out there. So we need to see more of him instead of Marco Beninelli. Let's go ahead and before we pitch to Steven again, let's give you some of the team stats on the night. Spurs for the night, they shot 55.2%, connecting on 48 of 87 of their field goal attempts. From beyond the arc, the Spurs were 9 of 29, which is good for 31% from beyond the arc. Free throws, they were 24 of 26, 92.3%. The rebounding battle went to the San Antonio Spurs. They out-rebounded the Boston Celtics 49 to 39. Another telling stat for the night were points in the paint. And the Spurs outscored the Celtics in the points in the paint 50 to 36. Fast break points you'd think would be in favor of the San Antonio Spurs. Unfortunately, they give the edge to the Celtics. The Celtics outscored the Spurs in fast break points 15 to 11. So you like to see some of the stats improving as far as their turnovers, and I like to see that as well. Total turnovers from the night was dead even, 15 at 15. You kind of want to see that number come down a little bit more, especially if the Spurs are going to remain competitive and keep their winning streak moving forward against some of the better teams out there. You have to keep those turnovers down, because when you play against explosive teams that can run in the open court, those turnovers are instrumental to you winning, and you can't be giving up points going the other way off of stupid passes. You know, those stupid bounce passes or that extra pass. I want to see them clean that aspect of the game up a little bit more. I think they become a little too complacent at times, where they're looking to go ahead and have an extra pass added on to the play to extend the play, instead of taking that first open look that they have that's a good shot, because they're afraid of getting in Coach Pop's doghouse. But if you have an open look to the basket, take it. Shoot your shot, especially DeJounte Murray, which I have to admit, he's looked good over the course of the last couple of games. His shot has improved quite a bit, and you can see that confidence is building in him. So that's something that I've noticed. What can you tell us about DeJounte and his hot shooting as of late, Stephen?
Yeah, DeJounte is one that I was a little iffy about when the season started, because obviously he was coming off that ACL injury. It takes some time to get back from that. He get his form down. He struggled a little bit to start, but as you said, Joe, he's now been playing a lot better. He's more explosive. He gets to the rim. He's being a threat from three, which he wasn't last season, or even in his first season, he wasn't. So we've seen him improving now in that area, and I think that's the next area where we're going to need to see him improve, which is, like I said before, the game is moving that way. LaMarcus Aldridge finally looks like a big man that can actually hit threes from the outside like everybody else does. DeJounte Murray now needs to take that Russell Westbrook type approach and start hitting from the outside. Don't become Russell Westbrook and chuck up 40 shots a game, but I mean, just have the nice, decent size to actually get out there and shoot some threes. And I like his aggressiveness. He looks more confident. Lonnie, Derek White, and DeJounte, those three together have looked a lot better as a unit, particularly those three together as a unit these past couple of weeks. So that's good news for the Spurs. And when you pair that with DeMar and LaMarcus, it can only mean success. Rudy Gay's the one where I'm kind of iffy about, because we've seen it. Obviously, he's a little bit older
as of late, Stephen. It looks like he's a little, not as consistent as he was in the beginning of the season.
Right, yeah, and he's not consistent. That's what kind of worries me. I mean, he had some great games in the beginning of the year. He's kind of declining a little bit. I mean, I know he's getting up there in age. He's had some injuries. He had the Achilles injury. So, I mean, that's one negative sign, I would say, for the Spurs team, considering he's one of your main pieces, quote-unquote main pieces of this team. If you're thinking of a big three, you're thinking of Rudy, DeMar, and LaMarcus, but now it's starting to turn into Lonnie, Derek White, DeJounte Murray, and LaMarcus. The one thing, guys, I would say is, and I've said this before, is I'm not sure where Trey Lyles fits into the starting lineup.
He's an enigma.
Huh?
He's an enigma right now. He really doesn't have a set place out there. He's a starter, yes, but he really hasn't found his footing, which your assumption is dead on, Stephen.
Right, yes, that's what I'm really not too much concerned with, just kind of like puzzled with, because as you guys know, and I've been a huge Jakob fan ever since he got here, after I knew who he was. I've been a huge Jakob fan since then, and this season he's really improved his game a lot by a mile. He's grabbing rebounds. He's aggressive. He's not a pushover. He is not some of those centers like a Roshan Nesterovic that kind of was a little bit soft. He's not that type of player. He is a very tough, hard-nosed defender. He is a good on the glass. So I wonder if LaMarcus is out there hitting threes like he's been doing, and he can stay consistent like he's been doing. What is Trey Lyles out there for? I mean, if Trey Lyles can get some rebounds, but if it was me, I would go with Jakob Poeltl, who is a bigger defender, better defender, overall player. But I mean, you know what? The Spurs have won 2 in a row against top teams. I'm not a coach, so I'm not going to sit here and dictate it. But I mean, just from how it looks, that's one thing I would like. Okay, maybe it's a matchup thing. I don't know. But going back to DeJounte Murray,
I think it's experience.
Joe,
I think it has to do more with experience. I think Pop trusts Trey Lyles a little bit more than he does with Jakob Poeltl, even though we can see when they're both out there and they're playing, we can see what Trey Lyles does defensively and what Jakob Poeltl does defensively. And, of course, Jakob Poeltl is a better defensive player. I just don't think Pop trusts him thus far into the season. That's something that he's going to have to gain by playing good, hard-nosed basketball or Spurs basketball. So I think there's some aspects of his game that still gets him into Coach Pop's doghouse, which is why we don't see him out there more.
Can I interject something into that real quick?
Sure.
with Trey Lyles? I felt like the Spurs tone of the game was set up by Trey Lyles today. I felt like his play early on was what really set the tone for the Spurs to play confidently and calm. You know, I kind of feel like, and this is just my personal take, I have no data to back this up. I feel like Trey Lyles is kind of that lottery-based guy.
Take that for data.
Take that for data. He's kind of that lottery-based, guy that people think is a bust, that they're not really sure he ever really is going to meet his potential, that just hasn't ever really gotten a chance. I kind of feel like he's getting more comfortable. They're not sure how to utilize him yet. And because of that, because he is getting more comfortable, he's going to get more minutes. How they're going to do that? Maybe it's because Bryn sits. Maybe they shift somebody else over to the 2. Maybe it's a Rudy. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe they put Lyles in a little bit more of that 3, stretch 4 position. But I will tell you this, guys. I really do feel like that Lyles has really turned the corner from what he was at the beginning of the year, which he was so skittish. You didn't think that he was even going to stay on the roster. I thought
because if he makes mistakes, Coach Pop will yank him out of the game. And if they keep playing the way Coach Pop wants, they're going to get in his favor and they'll stay in there and they'll get more minutes. See, that's the strange thing about this whole thing. The players are very capable of playing better than they are. But the thing is, they need to play in the mindset of how is this going to benefit the team? Because if they start going out of that comfort zone and start wanting to do too many things, it kind of disrupts the flow of the offense. And that's when you're going to get yanked and Coach Pop is going to delegate you to the bench. So I can kind of see why they do those things.
Yeah. Sorry, Steven. I just thought, to me, that was one thing that stuck out to me is that I feel like he's underutilized, but I kind of feel like it's just one of those things where they're giving him a chance to see who he can be at this point, but maybe this season he's only going to get 15 minutes or at max.
Yeah, I got a quick question for Steven. Steven, Joanne says Murray misses a lot of the easy layups. And, one of the other things I've noticed as well is at times, so does Lonnie Walker and so does Derek White. It's not that they're wanting to miss. It's just it's hard to get to the rim when you're trying to go through traffic. Then you're not in rhythm and you're just trying to use your athleticism and quickness to try to throw the ball up and hopefully it goes in. You're trying to kiss it off the glass or do a finger roll or you're trying to do a floater. And sometimes when you're not in that rhythm and you're just forcing the issue, we're going to see those misses. Sometimes they play a little ahead of themselves, I think, and they need to kind of calm that down and kind of slow things down a little bit. You don't have to always have the flashy play. A jump shot or a quick layup or a floater at the right time will still get you the 2 points. Even a trip to the stripe will get you 2 points, Steven. So that's how I'll go ahead and answer Joanne's observation. Let's put it like that. But go ahead and let us know what your thoughts were, Steven.
Yeah, so basically all I was saying is like that's the whole thing with Jakob and Trey Lyles. I'm not going to say he's a hindrance because he's not, definitely, but not at all. But it just was concerning to me, or it was interesting to me, and not really concerning, more interesting that as well as he's been playing, he hasn't been getting the starter minutes. And I guess, and remember back into last season when the Spurs made that 9-game winning streak, that run to go into the playoffs, he was a starter at that time. Of course, there was no Trey Lyles to San Antonio at that time, but Jakob was a starter at that time when it was going on. So that's why I was like, well, maybe if they go back to that starting lineup, they got them into the playoffs, that could get them going again. And no. But I mean, overall, guys, you're right, Wesley. Trey Lyles has improved miles from what he did at the beginning of the season. He looks a lot more confident. He's actually searching for his jump shot now, which he wasn't doing prior to the season started, or when the season started. He is more confident in shooting threes, which is always good for big men to shoot threes. I'm all for that. But going to that comment, Joe, about DeJounte Murray missing layups, I've always felt this ever since he had those limited minutes. I feel like he knew, okay, I'm out of here in 20 minutes. I got to do what I can on the court right now in these 20 minutes to help my team win.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it's kind of like you're overdoing it to the sense where you're overplaying, you're overthinking, you're overdoing too much, too fast, like that. Now the minutes restriction is over, but there's still a point of, I feel like he's trying again to do too much when he doesn't need to. He doesn't need to make that extra pass. He doesn't need to, whenever the screen comes, he doesn't need to go around the man and pitch it back to LaMarcus if LaMarcus particularly was not expecting the ball, or whoever is not expecting the ball. So there's it's the little things that he's doing where I think he's overthinking sometimes, and that just comes with experience. I mean, he missed all of last season. Technically, if you want to be real, technically this is his second full season in the NBA, because last season he was just gone completely with an ACL. So, and then first season he got sparingly minutes here and there because he was in the D League. So this is his first real, quote unquote, real test in the NBA, his real time to shine, so to speak, taking that mantle from Tony Parker. And there's going to be hiccups. I mean, there was hiccups with Lonnie Walker, and there's going to be hiccups with the other rookies that are going to come in over the next couple of years. So it's just a matter of learning where you fit in, learning how to play with the guys you're playing with. So, I mean, all that's going to come and go, and he's going to be the player that I think all of us expect him to be.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and start winding this show down, because I'm sure everybody has to start getting ready to go to bed and get ready for tomorrow, because it already is getting closer to 10 p.m. over here, Central Standard Time in San Antonio. But the Spurs played their first of 5 road games. The Celtics game that they won tonight was the first of the 5 road games. Now they have 4 road games left, including the Memphis Grizzlies, which they play on Friday. Then they're going to play the Toronto Raptors on Sunday. Then they have the Heat on Wednesday. That Heat game is very important, and the reason I say it's very important is officially that's the halfway mark of the season. So the Spurs are starting to play better basketball at the right time, and at that halfway mark, which will be on Wednesday, we have to go ahead and give the Spurs a grade thus far into the season. And yes, they're playing great as of late, but we have to go ahead and grade the team based on the product that we're seeing right now. And one of those products is the record. Let's go ahead and see what happens over the course of these last couple games to see how much closer they can get to 500. You don't want to see them below 500. You want to start seeing that number kind of change a little bit, because you want them to get better, because you know that you have the rodeo road trip coming up. So the last game on this road trip here is going to be against it is against the Heat, and then the Spurs return to the AT&T Center and they play the Hawks. And so that's, like I said, that Heat game is again the halfway mark of the season. So we need to go ahead and find out, like I was telling you guys, be ready to hand out your grades for the Spurs at the halfway mark of the season. So in closing here, what do you think the team will do on this leg of the road trip here? Do you think they're going to be able to stay perfect and actually beat the Grizzlies, the Raptors, and the Heat? Or you think they're going to go 1-2? Or you think they're going to go 2-1? Go ahead and give us your observations. In closing here, we'll go ahead and start with you, Wesley. Go ahead and shut us down here and give us your observations, your predictions for this last leg of the road trip.
Well, normally I'm really bad luck, so if I predict something too big, then I'm afraid it'll backfire. Um, I I sincerely hope that they go 4-0 on this leg. I think they won the hardest game tonight. I know the Heat game is going to be daunting. Miami's playing. They're so significantly improved this year, playing really good ball. Toronto is, they're the defending champions. They play with a lot of pride. Siakam's no lie. They've got some good players, but they're still, they still don't have a lot of their players, that they've had in the past too, and so they're vulnerable. I think that's right for the chance of the Spurs to go up there and win. Personally, I want them to go 4-0 because I'm taking my son. Shout out to my little boy. It's his birthday on Friday, and for his birthday, we're going out to the Hawks game. So it would be great to see the Spurs play the Hawks for a chance to go to 500 that night. But realistically, I think probably they drop one. I'm going to say, though, that the corner has been turned a bit. They drop one probably, I'll say, against the Heat, but they win the first three of this trip and
road trip
and go 3-1.
Yeah, I said 5 games. It's a 4-game road trip. They played the first one against the Celtics. There's 3 more left, so the end will be against the Miami Heat. So in closing here, Steven, what do you think as far as your prediction for the rest of this road trip? Let us know that. And like Wesley said, do you think the Spurs turned the corner yet?
I do. I think the Spurs have turned a corner. I'm not going to say they made a massive turn around the corner, but they're peeking around, which is good enough for this point. They're peeking around the corner. They see the good news in the distance, so to speak. So that's good enough for right now. I think I like you, Wesley. I think the Spurs go 3-1, 3-1 on this road trip. You said Toronto's the defending champions, and they are. They're too inconsistent to me right now, up and down. And also, they don't really feel like defending champions, if I'm honest. I mean, when you think of who won the championship last year, I completely have to look it up. It was Toronto, because you don't think of Toronto as part of America. I don't know. It's a weird thing. I don't know.
They're missing the deuce, too. They're missing the deuce, too, Stephen.
They are. They really are. But, I mean, it doesn't feel like, I don't know. It's a weird thing. So, I think that they can. Do I hear an echo?
No?
I hear an echo.
Yeah, I hear an echo too.
I haven't done nothing.
Interesting. Okay. Anyway, so I think the Spurs go 3-1. I think that they have a better overall game against Miami, like we've seen, but that's the one I think they drop. I think they drop that game to Miami because Miami is no joke. Miami is a very good defensive team. They have good shooters. They have consistent shooters. The Spurs, even though they played well recently, can they actually completely turn that corner and play hard-nosed defense for 48 minutes, play consistently offensively for 48 minutes? It's that third quarter after halftime, and Wesley, you alluded to it earlier, that third quarter after halftime that always gets them. And if it happens against Miami, I don't think they win that game. So that's where I'm a little bit shaky about, but I think they beat Toronto. They're going to blow the crap out of Memphis. So we'll see what happens. But I think 3-1 is a good idea. And for them to go 4-0 would be a very, very good sign, but I think it's 3-1. Joe.
Yeah, I have to kind of agree with you guys. I think that the Spurs will probably go 3-1 on this leg of the road trip as well. I think they're going to wind up losing that game against the Heat. I think the Heat are good defensively, and they're going to give the Spurs trouble as far as the matchups. You know, they do have some much improved offensive players on that team that can give you fits from night to night, and they get streaky and they can get hot on any given night, you know, and on any given quarter. So the Spurs are definitely going to have to be on their A game, both defensively and offensively, to be able to get this win against the Miami Heat, because they are coached by a decent coach. He has won a couple of championships as well, you know. So Eric Spoelstra is not a slouch. You know, he's quite good at what he does. So the point I'd like to make is, look what he's able to do with the Miami Heat thus far in the season. You know, really nobody gave him a chance to be the team that they are right now. You know, they probably thought they were going to have a really bad record or maybe be a lottery team, but, you know, kudos to him and what he's been able to do with that team. So definitely, I think that's going to be one of the games that we're going to have to keep a close eye on. But I don't think that the Spurs have turned the corner just yet. I'd like to see them string together maybe 2 more games. If they can still remain competitive, even if they lose, I'll say they turned the corner. I'm just not ready to give them that label because I've seen this happen before. They play good for 2 games and then they'll give you that 3rd game and they just lay an egg and disappear. So I'm hoping that they have, in fact, turned the corner. I just want to see a little bit more before I go ahead and give it my stamp of approval. But that's me. I'm the optimist. I'm the realist here. So I'm just going to say give it a game or 2 before I jump on board with you guys. But we're going to
I don't know, man. I just got to throw this out there. They whooped both teams, the best 2 teams in the Eastern Conference, and we're leading both of those teams. They actually finished 22 points ahead of the Bucks, and they were ahead by 22 most of the night tonight. It's hard to ignore that. I mean, that's
it is, Wesley,
tough-minded ball.
But let's see how they play against some of these lesser teams because Jonas is the one who made the observation early on in the season. The Spurs will play up to the level of their competition, which is what they're doing right now in these last 2 games. They can't take the Memphis Grizzlies for granted, even though the Memphis Grizzlies really don't have a record that would scream to you, hey, this team is going to be up there making a drive for the playoffs, given their situation and what they have going on with their team right now as far as their limitations. They do have a good young core of players. They're just still missing a piece or 2 before they're going to be back up again in the mix, being talked about as, hey, this team is going to be making a run for the playoffs. They're going to be back up there with the best of them. They're still probably a couple years away from that. But the Spurs, they can't take the teams for granted. So in closing, where can they reach you on social media, Wesley?
Yeah, look me up at Twitter, at Wesley Perk. Of course, it's just my name, Wesley Perkins, on Facebook if you want to check that out or send me a friend request. It's a cool time of the year. The coaching search in the NFL is always fun. You got the playoffs going on. Spurs basketball. My Red Raiders lost a close heartbreak to Baylor last night, but kudos to Baylor on their playing, how well they're playing. It's a really, really good team. Also, we haven't talked a lot about movies, but Joe, you'll be happy now. I know you're a movie buff. I saw The Joker last night. Holy cow. So if you want to talk about a whole bunch of things on Twitter, love to tweet with you about a bunch of different things.
I have a theory about the Joker. It throws shades of Inception, that movie Inception. You really don't know what's reality and what's made up. I'll just leave it at that because I'm not about to give any spoilers away for people who have not watched it. But it is a good movie, so I recommend that you go ahead and check that out. Speaking of series that you need to check out, I know in closing here, Steven, you got Michael DeLeon hooked on a series that he can't simply just walk away from. So go ahead and let us know what that's about and where they can reach you on social media.
Yes, first of all, you guys can find me on Twitter at the Stephen A_ Stephen with a PH. I talk everything from San Antonio Rampage, Spurs, SAFC, who's had some massive signings this week, including their goalkeeper back Cardone. He's back for another season. They look to have a very good season with a brand new head coach as well. So that's going to be fun to cover and fun to watch. Of course, the San Antonio Rampage are in season. And of course, we have the Spurs. That's what we're all here for tonight. If you're interested in TV, you guys can follow me on my other Twitter. That is StephenTV_. As you mentioned, Joe, I have Mike hooked on The Circle. It is a reality show based out of the UK where, just long story short, 8 people live in a 1-bedroom apartment. They're all spread around the apartment in different parts of the living complex. They can only communicate with each other via a voice-activated app called The Circle, and they have to figure out who's really real and who's fake. And that's the whole point of the show, is to find out who the catfish is. It gets very interesting and very competitive, and it kind of makes you realize, be careful what you're saying on social media and be careful what you put out there because it can always come back to haunt you. So, Wesley, Joe, if you want to check that out, feel free to watch it. You probably will get addicted, and I hope you do. So,
we're going to be joining Michael DeLeon. All right, so there you go.
Guys, I got my mom, I got Mike, and I got Ty Yager also addicted to the show. So if you guys watch it, just be careful.
Okay, now where do I watch this?
Netflix.
Okay, it's on Netflix. All right,
All right. That's a new show that I'll have my my daughter and my wife hooked on. They watch something called Terrace House. Terrace House, and they love that because there's so many different terrace houses. I don't know because I don't watch the show. I just know that I walk in from time to time when I'm walking from my studio into the house, and I see them there, and I'm like, man, you guys are still watching this thing. So now it's the circle. So I'll make sure I'll let them know about that.
No joke, guys. I actually, I was, as you guys know, I cover UK TV, and that's where it originated in the UK. I actually spent, I'm not even kidding, 6 hours watching the first season, over New Year's Eve break or Christmas break, and I spent 6 hours watching it, and I was that hooked. I didn't go to bed at like 6 in the morning.
Oh my god.
That's me in Game of Thrones last year in spring break, man.
Yeah,
I don't think I got off my couch for about the first 4 days.
I don't really get hooked on shows.
I got 3 seasons in about 4 days. I think it was something crazy like that.
Yeah, I don't really get hooked on shows, man. I don't get hooked on shows. I get hooked with creating content and like getting all this technology, that we're using here right now on this live stream, ready to roll out. To me, that's exciting. I get up for that. That's why I stay in my studio most times. I'm tinkering with new emerging technologies and seeing what's coming up next so we can deliver a better and better product. I'm all about content creation and looking at, technology that we can incorporate into the show that we're bringing to our viewers right now. So that's what I like. I'm a nerd. I know it's not fun. It's not something that's for everybody, but yeah, I like it. So you can go ahead and reach, me on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, where you can see the replay of the Spurs takeover on our YouTube channel. And we're at Two Shots Podcast, all spelled out, TWOSHOTS Podcast. So for Steven Anderson and Wesley Perkins, I'm Joe Garcia. And thank you guys for watching and listening to another episode of the Spurs Takeover. And before we go, make sure you go and check out our good friends at Project Spurs for all your Spurs content. Go ahead and check out ProjectSpurs.com and check out the Project Spurs Network for all the latest and greatest about the local sports scene here in San Antonio, your local Spurs coverage, and your local, high school and college coverage as well. So that's about all the time we have for tonight's episode of the Spurs Takeover. And like we always say, spread the love, stop the hate, and be kind. We're out. Peace.